Hey guys, Pizza Boy here. Today I was asked to make a video about all the Mini Coopers I've owned and which ones were the best. So far in my life, I've owned one in every generation. So far since BMW has bought them, there's 4 generations. I've actually only owned 3 of the 4. Only just because I can't afford the new ones quite yet, so I usually buy them used, of course. But I've owned an R53, which is this one right here. This is an MC40 edition, so very rare car. Supercharged model. I've owned an R56, which was the next one, the turbocharged version of the Mini Cooper S, and then I've owned an F56, which was the another turbocharged version, but mine was a JCW edition, so it was very, very nice, very, very clean, and very, very powerful for a Mini Cooper for sure. So I guess I'm just going to go through the different variations and which ones are the best and which ones maybe you should probably think about avoiding if you can. So let's get into it. So first, I'm going to start with this car, which is the R53, the supercharged model. These cars are almost bulletproof in a lot of ways. Their aluminum block engines are very, very reliable to an extent. I personally have not had any engine trouble since I've had this car. I've had this car 2 years now, and nothing's been wrong with it. I've never had any real issues with any of my Minis. None of them have ever broken down. Maintenance on Minis, regardless of what generation you have, is always going to be a little bit expensive. It may be a small car, but you're always going to be paying BMW prices for every generation. BMW labor fees, BMW parts costs, that type of stuff, so keep that in mind. So R53, in my opinion, is the best one. And, you know, each one's different. The F56 was very powerful, and it was a very, very refined for sure, and I loved that car so much. But it just was a different type of car. You know, it was much, much bigger, probably like a good 1.5 feet longer, I think. I don't know what the actual measurements are, but it was way bigger than this car. And that one was just a Mini Cooper S, or sorry, the Mini Cooper John Cooper Works version of the car. And it was just big. It was a bigger car. That's just like with the times. This R53 is so tiny. I love it. I love the idea of how compact and small it is. I can fit it into almost any parking spot I want to. It's great when driving through traffic. So reliability on R53s, they're okay if you maintain them. Right now I'm at 135,000 miles on mine, so quite a bit. But I've seen some of these, and I know other Mini Cooper owners that own R53s that have had their cars for a long time and have almost 200,000 miles, and their engines are still doing just fine, and the supercharger hasn't gone out on those yet either. So it just kind of depends. However, I have heard some horror stories, just like every other car brand as well, that, you know, extra oil leaks, hot engine temperatures, that type of stuff. So it just kind of depends, but so far my Mini Cooper's been bulletproof. I did have to replace the clutch recently, but that's, you know, almost 130,000 miles. That's not really too uncommon, I'd say. Usually when you get a car with that many miles on any generation with a manual transmission, at some point that clutch is going to go out. So, okay, so next generation, the R56. The R56 was actually the first car, or the first Mini Cooper that I bought. It was a black one. I'll put some pictures up here. I modded the hell out of that car. I added so many things to it, even like a massive carbon fiber wing. It was awesome. That car was great. It definitely was a level up in interior quality from the R53. This one actually, like build quality, is great. There's almost no hard plastics. It's usually all like aluminum or pieces and stuff. I mean, there are still plastics obviously, but the dash is still leather. Seats are real leather. Everything, all that kind of stuff. But the R56 was just another step up. So everything in that car was just a little bit better. They definitely like refined it. I also really, really loved the body lines of the R56. I love the R56 body lines. They're just more square, but they're not quite as over dramatic as the F56, which is the last version that we just got done with. That one that I had, the F56, was just a little bit too bubbly for me. It was a fun car. The interior was great. Performance was phenomenal. That car was a blast to drive. But the outsides and stuff, it just was a bit too much for me. I like the simplistic things and things that are refined for sure. This R53, for instance, and the R56, they're just simple, and they're not overdone. Everything was like made to the point. F56 and the newer generations are a little bit overdone in my opinion, but that's just me. So R56, great car. The turbo was awesome to deal with as well. You know, it would kick in around like, I think mine was like 4,200 RPM, so you really had to push that thing to get some power out of it, which was great. So that was always fun. The R56 also got really good gas mileage for what it was. Obviously with a Mini Cooper, you're always going to be getting premium. There's no way you can go less than that on these cars. But I think that one was probably the most fuel efficient version that I've had so far. There was a feature in the F56 that I'll go into later where it was like an eco mode, which was kind of nice. It would like shut off the engine and stuff, which was kind of nice. But I think the R56, just from my recollection, was probably the most conservative with gas. And that car was awesome. All of the Minis I've had so far have been manuals, except for the JCW F56. That was an automatic. The transmission in that one was fine. It was great to kind of take a break from the manual, but I went back to a manual right after just because I missed the engagement of that. So yeah, so in comparison, R53 is definitely going to be a lot cheaper for an entry into Mini, but there's going to be a lot more things that come with that, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. So there may be things wrong with the car. Maybe the conditions may not be that well. I mean, that you're going to be buying R53s, you're not going to get one that's less than 20 years old, I would imagine, right? So, you know, it's kind of one of those things where you kind of just need to take what you can get with those. So if you can find a good version, great. R56, you know, those are fantastic. Those have dropped down in prices a lot as well. So if you're looking for just a little bit better of a car, in my opinion, well, better in different ways. Like if you want like the more refined version of things, because this car is very hardcore. It's very lightweight. It's very noisy. There's like zero sound deafening in any of this stuff. There's no anything like that. It's very lightweight. And the F56 is just a little bit more refined. So if you want a little more comfort, but still that fun Mini factor that looks more like a Mini still, R56, great option for sure. So F56, when I bought mine, it was great. I bought mine right before the pandemic, so I kind of got a pretty good deal on it. And then once the pandemic hit, used car prices got up, so I was like, it's now or never. I might as well sell it to make some cash. And I made a really nice profit off that car, so I'm very grateful for that. But the F56 was just so well thought through and so refined. I have a few videos and pictures. I'll put some up here as well. Mine was like a cream white with a red top, so the exact opposite of this car. This one's chili pepper red with a white top, so opposite colors. But the F56 was just so fine-tuned, you know. It's like they've gone through building Minis for 20 years. They know what their customers like. They know what they don't like. The infotainment system was still great. Mine had a digital display instead of the analog stuff, so that was nice as well. And just the quality too. Like honestly, like the difference, like, you know, for 2004, this is not bad. Even today, like I just sold an Audi TTS, a 2014 model, which was great, and that was a very luxurious car for sure. Well, in the sense of like interior stuff, everything was like aluminum and stuff. It was great. And to be honest, the touch points in this car are still really good. The F56 though was just that next level, you know, like they really BMW-ified the interior of that car compared to this one. This one doesn't really share too many other parts with any other BMWs in the lineup. R56 kind of shared a few more pieces, but the F56 was the one where they really started to share more stuff that you really, not like things that you could really tell too much, but you could just tell it was more BMW and just a little bit more refined for sure. Very comfortable car. I had the Recaro bucket seats in mine, and those were still a blast to drive, and they hugged you very, very nicely. So those were great. It was also really nice to have different modes as well. This car, the R53, doesn't have a sport mode. It's a sport car through and through right from the get-go. So there's no suspension dampening, there's no extra buttons you need to press, any of that stuff. It just kind of does it, and I love that part. It's just what it is. You don't need to try and do anything else with it. R56 did have a sport button, and that definitely did change the throttle response, as well as the throttle response and boost was a little bit different as well with that as well. Not too much, but enough, and it also tightened the suspension just a little bit, so it was a little more sporty to drive, which was great. The F56 though, there was a massive difference, and I'm kind of surprised because when I compare the F56 that I just had to the Audi TTS that I just had, the TTS was really nice for sure, and that was also a 4-cylinder turbo as well as the F56. But what's weird is the power band was way different. The F56 Mini JCW that I had was instant power. I mean, that thing kicked in so fast, and it was such a pull too. The TTS, in comparison to that one too, was very fast, but it took a long time for that boost to kick in for that turbo. But in comparison, they're almost identical in the sense of like performance-wise and numbers-wise. I'm pretty sure they have the same horsepower. I could be completely wrong, but from what I remember, they were very, very close. But F56, great car. I really did love that car in a lot of ways. Just the outside was the part to me that just didn't really mesh too much. But I loved the factory Union Jack taillights that came with it. I loved all the touch points. I loved how intuitive that car was. So just a little bit different, right? So price points wise, you know, especially with the JCW, this one's a MC40 and it has the John Cooper Works interior. So you could get an MC40 with a few different interior options, but this one was optioned with the John Cooper Works interior package. So it's still a Cooper S, but it's the John Cooper Works interior, which you can get with a few other models for Mini as well. If you get a John Cooper Works interior, everything's just a little bit nicer, which is great. But it's not like you don't get added performance wise, like horsepower or anything. It's nothing changes there. But I do like all the touch points in this car as well. So if I were to pick my favorite out of all three so far that I've owned, I'm gonna be honest. Even though this car is not the most expensive Mini, it definitely is the rarest Mini that's ever been made. The MC40 is extremely rare. They only made like 1,000 of these for the entire world, so very, very lucky to have my hands on this one. But if I had to pick out of the R53, the supercharged version, the R56, and the F56, so far out of like funness and Mini Cooper factor, this car so far has been the best of Minis. It's just small. It's an actual Mini. It was the first iteration of it, so they don't really work out all the issues and quirks of the car, which I kind of like the quirkiness of it. There's lots of things that don't make sense with this car, but I kind of like the oddness of that. The F56 was everything you wanted in a Mini, but it was also almost too perfect. Like there was almost nothing wrong with it, just the exterior, you know. It's just a little bit different. But if I had to pick like performance-wise and fun-wise, R53 for sure, funnest Mini you're gonna buy. And I don't really know of any other cars you can buy with a 4-cylinder supercharged engine from the factory. There may be a few other models that I'm just not thinking of, but normally you have to get like a supercharged Hellcat or something, or you know, or you have to add in a supercharger, you know, if you're going higher up and stuff. But sorry about that, guys. My camera died. It overheated somehow, so I don't know what I was talking about before. I don't know what I'm gonna cut that, but so yeah. So in conclusion to this video, R53 is by far, in my opinion, the best option out of all the generation I've owned so far, just because of the funness factor, the small factor, and just the cool factor. They didn't really make a lot of these cars, especially if you find a limited edition version. So you just get a little bit more of everything with the first generation. Just keep in mind that when you do buy the first gen, you are giving up a lot of other modern comforts that you normally would get with other cars. But to be honest, this car's so much fun. I'd recommend it to anybody who is a driving enthusiast. You know, I'll even compare to this car because I literally just sold my TTS like yesterday or 2 days ago, whatever it was. That car was very expensive, very fun to drive, very fast to drive. But when I was driving it, it did not have the same fun characteristics as this car. And I would drive that TTS to work and back. And then when I got home, I would drive this one just throughout the town just because of how much more fun it was. So that may speak a little bit more about how much fun this car is. So if you have the cash, if you want to take the risk on a fun car, R53 Cooper S for sure. John Cooper Works if you can find it, or if you can get yourself a GP, top. That's recommended for sure. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.